He spent 16 years as a feared Red Sox slugger.
It was just a different sound, and it came off his bat with a different speed.
And then another 15 patiently waiting for the call.
So I went to school and had my phone off because I wasn't thinking about it.
He's a friend of those who wore the uniform before him.
The hardest working guy we've ever had around here has been Jimmy Rice.
With him.
It wasn't just the homers. I mean, every time he hit the ball, it was a bullet somewhere.
And after him.
He's a guy that is history walking around the clubhouse here.
From small town Anderson, South Carolina to the halls of Cooperstown, New York, we chronicle the baseball life of Red Sox great Jim Rice on this special edition of the Red Sox Report presented by CVS Pharmacy. Jim Rice's life began far from Fenway in a small town, Anderson, South Carolina.
My mom and dad was just like common mom and dads. You know, my mom worked for a doctor. My dad basically was a recreational guy where he works for the city of Anderson. And I was very fortunate and able enough to have some of the essentials as far as being in the sporting fields.
His family could field an entire team. If his siblings were a lineup card, Jim batted fourth.
I was total of 9, and I was very fortunate enough to come from a family that was very athletic. My sisters could play just as good as softball as I could play. I think the last girl, her name is Tracy, she wasn't more of in the sports field, you know. she let us do all the sports, and she just sit back and watched everyone else.
The Rice children grew up across the street from their elementary school.
And I remember my 6th grade year, I was a patrolman of the school, and I was the captain of the patrolman. So if we have to be at school at 8:30, I walk out of my house about 8:20, 8:25. I just make sure everybody's there walking the guys, walking the kids across the street. I go over to the house.
As patrolman, Jim was first spotted by a young girl named Corrine.
And so I lived in the country back then, and he was a city boy. So every morning I got off the bus, I saw him leading us across the street. I really didn't know him. I saw him. I took classes with him in high school as well, but he was just another boy in the classroom.
Organized baseball began for Jim in high school.
My 7th grade year. 7th grade, we went 7 through 12, and I was playing senior high ball in my 7th grade year. And of course I started playing American Legion. American Legion consists of kids that are within the neighborhood, but different schools, different areas. And it was more of who wants to play or who wants to be an all-star. And the way you play by being an outstanding ball player to get on the American Legion team.
It was also in high school that Jim's future wife fell into his arms.
I played basketball, he played basketball, and in the 9th grade, that's when I really met him. We were on a road trip basketball game, and it was a really winter night. We ran to the bus, except I slipped on the ice, and a hand caught me before I fell. It was him.
Still got good hands.
And I looked up to see who it was. I said, oh. So he walked me home that night from we got back to the school, and we dated from that point on. 4 years in high school, and we've been married for almost 37 years.
Before Jim's senior year, the city remapped the school district lines. Legend has it because of Jim's athletic talent.
I can't say it was of me, but they did remap. At one time, we have a area called Murray Avenue. Then we have where I lived that was on Reed Street. They went from Murray Avenue behind my house, and from behind my house had to go to Hannah.
But that was just move number 1. Coming up, Jim chooses the path that leads him to Fenway.
I talked to my dad about making a decision. He said, you want to go to school or do you want to play baseball?
Jim Rice's answer when the Red Sox Report presented by CVS Pharmacy continues. Jim Rice was a three-sport star during his high school days in Anderson, South Carolina, but he wasn't caught up in the hype when the baseball draft rolled around in 1971.
Draft day, I was up, downtown. I was shooting billiards, and a guy came in and said, "Hey man, you were just drafted." I said, "Okay, that was it." So I kept shooting billiards, and I couldn't do anything, so I kept shooting billiards. And after I finished shooting billiards, I went home, and they said the Red Sox drafted you. I said, "Okay, that was it."
Jim had options, though. A football scholarship to Nebraska was also on the table.
It was pretty easy. I don't recall how long it took me, but I talked to my dad about making a decision. He said, "Do you want to go to school or do you want to play baseball?" You know, you sit down and look at it, you say 4 years of college ball, you don't know how you're going to come out.
Jim signed with the Sox and reported to Williamsport, Pennsylvania. His first pro manager was current Sox player development consultant Dick Berardino.
He hit the fastball very well for a young kid, and that was the thing that impressed me the most. It was hard to get a fastball by him. He was young and strong.
Jim was with Double-A Bristol 2 years later when the Sox signed Fred Lynn, an outfielder from Southern California.
I'm just kind of shaking hands. How you doing? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. You know, I met the manager, Rack Slider. And then come to Jim, you know, I said, "Ooh, I better get in there good." Because I saw his arms first. I said, "Ooh." He was a large guy, you know. I could see those big old forearms on him. And he was tearing up the league. He was tearing it up. And I was just being introduced. So, you know, he's in left and I'm in center. And I've never played with him before, so I don't know where he's going to be, and he doesn't know what I'm going to do. And it took a while for us to figure that out.
Jim's offense didn't need much work, though. In 1974, Rice won the Triple Crown at Triple-A Pawtucket.
My year in AAA, it just seemed like everything just fell in place. But I had just hit over 300 in Double-A, so I couldn't go back to Double-A. And after coming to AAA and having a year that I had in AAA with about a month ago, there was no way they're going to send me back to AAA. I was hoping.
But there was a logjam in Boston. Yaz was still in left, and Jim's close friend Cecil Cooper was at first.
He always told me one thing, a couple things. He said, "Jimmy, one thing you got to believe in, you got to believe in yourself. And tell yourself you can do it. Just believe in yourself."
And I can remember watching Jimmy hit during those early years down there when we were in the instructional league in particular. And you knew he had raw talent, you know, and I just would always try to just tell him that, you know, he's a good player, he's a good hitter, and, you know, rely on that.
And at the end of the 1974 season, the big league call finally came.
He never said that he was never going to make it. He always felt like that he was. He would say, "When we make it to the major leagues, when we make it to the major leagues." So I never doubted it.
The Rices were on their way to Boston, but there was still a small issue in Jim's way.
I mean, it wasn't like I was going to go and take his spot. Come on, I mean, it wasn't that crazy.
Jim Rice's story continues when the Red Sox Report, presented by CVS Pharmacy, returns. Jim Rice made his major league debut August 19, 1974, and he was with the Red Sox to start the 75 season.
Yeah, I was playing left field. We got our head, going to be a Hall of Famer, All-Star.
Fly ball to deep left. Yastrzemski is going hard, and he dives and makes a tremendous catch.
I mean, it wasn't like I was going to go and take his spot. Come on, I mean, it wasn't that crazy. When you think about the Red Sox, you think about Yaz. I couldn't play first base. You had Dwight out in right field. You had Freddie in center. So I just sit and wait on my chance.
But the chance came quickly.
I can't give the exact date, but I knew that Yaz came out one day and he said, "Jimmy, come out to left field with me." He went to left field and he said, "I'm going to try to play left field." He took me out there one day and said, "That's it." He said, "It's yours." Walk back in.
Rice and fellow rookie Fred Lynn put up monster numbers at the plate in 75 to earn the nickname of the Gold Dust Twins. Lynn batted .331 with 21 home runs and 105 runs batted in. Rice hit .309 with 22 homers and 102 RBI.
Probably late May, early June is when we went 3-4, pretty much the rest of the season. And that's unheard of. Unheard of for rookies to be in the middle of the lineup on a contending team. Even though I don't think expectations were that high when we went into the season, they started to get pretty high as we started playing.
Drive to right field, let's go! 3 homers, Freddie Lynn.
But a September 21st injury ended Jim's season prematurely.
Fern Rule hit me with a ball in Detroit, and he wasn't throwing it. I tried to get out of the way, and the ball just kept tailing. Broke my finger, and I finished the game. And I went to the hotel, and Charlie Moss was the trainer. I called Charlie. I said, Charlie, something wrong with my hand.
The injury might have changed the outcome of the '75 World Series.
But then we went against the Big Red Machine without Jimmy, and boy, that hurt us. That really hurt us. I had this conversation with Joe Morgan many times that if you took Tony Perez out of your lineup, we'd have beaten you. Or if we would have had Jimmy and you had Tony, we'd still beaten you. No, he says.
We would have won it, and I think it would have been more of a fight between Rookie of the Year and MVP. Because if you look at my numbers, or if you go back and look at the history of my numbers, it seemed like that the last month and a half, that's when my numbers escalated.
Rice earned his MVP award 3 years later, though. He led the American League in 10 offensive categories in 1978.
It was great, but it was still tough because Guidry had a good year, and all of a sudden they was trying to put Guidry in there. You compare a pitcher to going out there every fourth day compared to a guy that played 163 games. And I think you look at numbers, there was no comparison.
There's a drive out to left field, and it's gone. Home run for Jim Rice, high up into the bleachers.
Jimmy was a monster in '78. He just started off just bombing right away. I think he had 45 or 46 homers, something like that. But it wasn't just the homers. I mean, every time he hit the ball, it was a bullet somewhere. And he hit like 15 triples that year. He didn't run that well. He ran well, but not 15 triples well.
Lynn left the Sox after the 1980 season, and that broke up one of the best outfield trios in baseball history. Rice, Lynn, and Evans.
Right field, deep. Evans is going back wall, and oh, what a catch he made.
But you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody in the history of the game that played and did as well as we did. We had over 1,000 home runs, and I don't know how many RBIs, but we put up some numbers, and all three of us in our careers, but you'd be hard-pressed to find a better combination than that. And defensively, I thought we had the whole game there.
Jim tirelessly tried to improve his defense throughout his career, while Fred Lynn and Dwight Evans combined for 12 Gold Glove awards with the Sox. Jim was in the outfield before every game with Johnny Pesky.
The hardest working guy we've ever had around here has been Jimmy Rice. Rice, to me, did more to help himself than any kid we've had around here. And you could recognize that when you first saw him.
Pesky was the type of guy that he took me up on his wings and said, whenever you want to work, we'll work.
And that work made Rice a mainstay in left, just like his two predecessors. When we return, Jim's dominance at the plate continues into the 80s.
When I think about Jimmy, he'd hit balls that were low and away, up and in, low and in, up and away, hit him out of the ballpark.
The Red Sox Report, presented by CVS Pharmacy, will continue after this. After Jim Rice was named American League MVP in 1978, he and Corrine welcomed the first of their two children, Chauncey, into the world.
He was born October the 7th. He had to be in New York for something with that MVP stuff, and Chauncey was late. My mom had gone home because my sister was getting married, so I was home alone. So I called him up the next morning, because I had to go to the hospital. I called him up and said, I'm getting ready to have the baby. You're in New York, you have to get back here. Well, when he went out, the weather was bad, so he had to drive to Rhode Island to get on a flight to get to New York. So he had to fly back to Rhode Island to get his car, so he had a state trooper escort all the way from Rhode Island to the hospital, and Chauncey had been born 5 minutes by the time he got there. But it was wonderful. And by the time my second child came along, Carissa came along, it was the last game of the season. He did not go to the ballpark, let me tell you.
And she was late.
So he was there for Carissa to be born.
Double hitter that day.
But you were with us, dear.
Jim finished in the top 5 of MVP voting 6 times in his career. One he spent entirely with fellow outfielder Dwight Evans.
When I think about Jimmy, is he'd hit balls that were low and away, up and in, low and in, up and away, hit him out of the ballpark. You didn't know how to pitch this guy. And if you threw one down the middle, you were really in trouble. So ball jumped off his bat. It was just a different sound, and it came off his bat with a different speed. It was just extra special. And he was natural. I mean, he was all natural.
Jim's success brought out his leadership, and in 1985, Jim was named team captain.
Well, I think not by playing left field. I think about being a leader. Well, Dewey had more time than I had, but I think it was more of a team decision who they decided to make captain. And by thinking about Williams, thinking about Yaz and myself, we all were leaders.
But Jim never much thought about the legacy the three had created with 50 consecutive years of service in left field.
I never looked at it. I never thought about it. And I'm thinking about it now because of the Hall of Fame. But I never thought about it. I never thought about any pressure. I just went out and enjoyed playing the wall. The thrill about playing the wall is holding guys to singles. You know, that was like my territory.
I always knew that Jimmy was a good outfielder, but one thing that people don't talk about is Jimmy had a great arm. And he seemed to throw better and more accurate, and he was had pinpoint control. When he'd go in the corner, left field corner, he had pinpoint control when he threw across his body to second base. One hop or all the way, it was pinpoint.
Jim's final MVP caliber season was 1986, a year he finally got to play in a World Series. He batted .333 in the Fall Classic, but didn't drive in a run.
You know, when you go back and look at it, I think I led off about 9 times, 8, 9 or 10 times in the World Series. And so I was chastised for that. I didn't do enough. I just led off 9 times. But, you know, you're going to have critics that go back and dissect everything, and that was one of the things that when it came to me to dissect it, that I didn't hit enough.
Injuries took their toll from there, and Jim hung up his spikes after he played in just 56 games during the 1989 season.
I had 2 operations on my left knee and 2 operations on my right arm. Just wear and tear on the body, just playing every day, sliding, not necessarily running the wall, but just diving and doing a lot of things. And that's going to happen. That's one thing that I can say. I don't think I really cheated when I went out there every day, regardless of pain or injuries. No one knew anything, just played the game.
Jim's retirement in 1989 meant he never wore another Major League uniform, and he never uprooted Corrine and their 2 children.
Well, to be able to play for one ball club and stay in the city for the length of time we've been here. We've been here in Boston as long as we're from South Carolina. My wife and I from South Carolina. We've been here longer than we've been in South Carolina, so this is more home than anything else.
There was still one more stop for the Rices, but it wouldn't come quickly.
My numbers may not be good enough, but during that time, when you think about the time that I played, my numbers were good.
Jim's call to the Hall finally comes when the Red Sox Report, presented by CVS Pharmacy, continues. After Jim Rice's retirement from the Red Sox in 1989, it didn't take long for him to get back into the game.
Yeah, I think I took a year off, and then I think my wife said, you better get a job. So the Red Sox called me back, and I did some minor league work. But, you know, I wanted to have that time off to myself, but that got boring.
Jim was then named the Red Sox Major League hitting coach in 1995. He was on the clock for 1 Mo Vaughn MVP award and 2 Nomar Garcia-Parra batting titles.
Nomar was the type of guy that I could get him anytime. Mo Vaughn was the type of guy you had to jerk in the collar. Fallon sort of guy you had to smooth a little bit. So you knew all these guys, and it was just a makeup of getting to know your kids, I guess.
Jim left coaching in 2000 but remained an instructor, and he's developed relationships with current Sox players.
Every time I'm struggling, he come to me and he want me to do good, man. I really appreciate that from him. And he always watch. That's a great hitter that he was. He can tell when things are going down, when things are going wrong, you know what I'm saying? And pretty much every time he come to me and give me a hands up with whatever he see out there, you know, it helped me out a lot. And I really appreciate that. He's a guy that is history walking around the clubhouse here.
Then in spring training 2003, his arm was twisted into a new role by Sox principal owner John Henry.
And he walked by me one day and said, have you ever thought about doing TV? I said, no. He said, well, think about it. So, but this is all during spring training, so about a week later he came by and said, have you ever thought about it? I said, thought about what? I was joking with him. He said, I told you TV. I said, no. And before spring training ended, he walked by and said, you're doing it, and kept going. And so I've been with Nestle ever since. That's it. He said, you're doing it, and that was it. Never looked at me, just said you're doing it, and kept on walking.
But the most post-retirement attention Jim got each year came in January, when the Hall of Fame class was unveiled. And every year from 1994 through 2008, Jim fell short of election.
I thought about it, well, I think the first thing that I looked at the numbers. I said, well, my numbers may not be good enough. But during that time, when you think about the time that I played, my numbers were good. I was a home run, I could hit home runs, but I wasn't a home run hitter. I was more of a team guy. And then after the second time came around, third time, the fourth time, I stopped worrying about it. It wasn't in my hands anymore. It was more in the writers than anything else.
January 2009 marked Jim's 15th and final chance, and finally he got the call. Newton, Massachusetts native and Baseball Hall of Fame president Jeff Idelson was on the other line.
And I wanted to tell the world before I had a chance to call him. I wanted to call my mom, and everybody who loves Jim Rice, but to be able to share that news with a guy that I have so much respect for, someone I grew up with great admiration for, was truly rewarding.
To be able to now go into the Hall of Fame where you have a Williams and a Yastrzemski and a Rice that played their entire career with one ball club, he's alive.
It makes me feel great knowing that he finally gets the honor that he deserves, and Jimmy's a great guy, and he's been an outstanding player for many, many years, and I was pretty excited for him, and hopefully he'll get a chance to really just enjoy that moment.
Before Jim called his close friend Cecil Cooper, he called his wife.
So when I turned my phone on at lunchtime, there was a call from him, and he didn't say he got in, he said we got in, which was nice, because we got in right there. So it was very nice. I was so happy for him, really, really happy for him.
I am a husband called Rice. I'm a father called Dad. I am a brother called Ed. I am an uncle called Uncle Ed. I am a grandfather called Papa. Finally, I do mean finally, I am Jim Rice, called a Baseball Hall of Famer.
A few days after his enshrinement, Rice was back at his baseball home, Fenway Park, when he received the highest individual honor the Red Sox can bestow, a numbered retirement.
When I came here to this historic ballpark called Fenway, at the end of the '74 season, I could not have imagined that I would be blessed not only to spend my entire career in the Red Sox organization, but that I would be standing here one day in front of Red Sox Nation, to the best fans in baseball, having my number 14 retired with such greats as Cronin, Dorr, Pesky, Williams, Yaz, and Fisk.
James Edward Rice followed legendary Red Sox left fielders Ted Williams and Carl Yastrzemski. But over a 16-year Major League career spent entirely in Boston, Rice formed his own legacy. One that put his name in Cooperstown and his number 14 permanently on the right field facade at Fenway.